Hello and welcome to the 6th video out of 7 of the spell checker tutorial. It's called Disabling Punctuation. This video will show you how to create the without punct method, and this method will allow us to check words without having any punctuation in them, like a comma or a period or any other generic punctuation. Now this is important because, as you can see in the dictionary.txt, it just has plain words without any punctuation, and if a word in the text file that we input has a comma after it, like computer, comma, it will read that, and this will be one long string, and when it tries to check it through here, it will not be able to find it because it does not have that in there. Now, the first thing that we're going to do, obviously, is to create our method header. And this one is the second of its kind. We're going to be creating another vector of type integer, and it will be called without punct, which stands for punctuation, obviously. And this one will need to have a parameter of a string, and we're going to call that string temp. So basically the premise of this method is you're going to be inputting a string, obviously, and it will return a vector that contains two things. The first thing that it contains is the starting substring of the string and the length of the word that you need to be checking. So I will explain what those things mean in a little bit. So we're going to create the actual method, enter down a few times, and it's going to be vector of type int without punct string temp, and open close brackets, and we will be writing our method here. We can close the other ones. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do is create a little comment for us to remind us of what we're going to be checking for. We're going to be checking for commas, semicolons, or colons, semicolons, periods, question marks, exclamation points, quotation marks, and apostrophes. So those are, I know that's not all of the different types of punctuation that you can have. There are like slashes and arrow keys and all sorts of other things that we could use, such as asterisks or like whatever. But these are just the basic ones that you're going to find in your everyday text file. So the first thing, or the second thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a vector of type string called vector temp, and it will be of size 0, just like a few of the other methods that we have created. The next, we're going to create a comment, create temporary array. Now what this array that is going to be holding is basically, it's going to split this string up into separate letters. So if you if one of the input words was hello, that it would be 5 spaces long, and each space would hold a letter of the word. So space 0 would be H, space 1 would be E, space 2 L, E, L, O, obviously. Did I just miscount that? No, I'm right. Okay, we're good. So the next thing that we're going to do is actually set fill this vector with the word. So we're going to create a for loop with an unsigned int I being equal to 0. I is less than temp dot size, and that right there will let us make sure we don't have an an out of bounds exception on that temp variable, and I++. Now we are going to be using a method that we've already used before, so vector temp.pushback, which we've used before in the I believe the get starts method, and we're going to push it back with temp.substr, which stands for substring, and then I, 1. So what this will do is it will loop through every single letter in temp and set it equal or add it onto the array that we are creating here. So this this I means the starting. So in the substring method, there are two parameters, both integers. So this is the starting substring. So it'll start at 0 and get the first letter, and then the length of the substring that you want. And we just want it to be one letter, so it'll just be one of it. So we can create a little comment here. Fill the vector with the word. Now, next thing that we will do is create a variable, an integer variable called int I length equals temp.size and vector of type integer start and length. Now this is the actual vector that we will be returning, and instead of just doing open close parentheses, we are actually going to be setting this one equal to something for the first time. So we're going to set it equal to 0 and I length. So what this will do is it will create a excuse me, it will create a vector of type int called start and length. Error. I can't have the open close parentheses there, my bad. So it'll hold two integers, 0 being the first one always, because we want it to start at the first letter in temp, and I length, which will be the length of the word, obviously. So we're just gonna create a little comment here to let us know what we're doing. And length. So basically, the premise of this method is to return this array right here. Now, this array is important because not only does it hold the length of the word, but it also holds the starting point. Now, what the starting point means is that if there's a quotation mark at the beginning of a word, then if you start checking at the beginning of the word, it'll automatically give an error, or it will never be able to return true, because look at that, there's no quotation marks at the beginning of any of these words. So instead of checking at the beginning, it will start checking at the second letter, and this one will get smaller and smaller each time we find a punctuation at the end of a word in order to check in order to exclude that. The reason that we're doing it this way is because when we output the errors, we don't want to have their text file being changed except for when we tell them that the word is wrong. So the next thing that we're going to do in this method is we are going to create a for loop. So for unsigned integer I equals 0, I is less than vector temp.size, which will be the length of this vector that we created right here. and I plus plus. Now we can use the variable I multiple times because it's a local variable, and it will this variable only exists in this for loop, and this variable only exists in this for loop. So we're going to create an if statement that will say if vector temp I equals equals, and now we're going to check to see if it equals a comma. So basically this is saying if the first letter, well actually no, it's going to loop through every single letter in the word and see if it equals a comma or any of the other punctuation that we will be checking. So we're going to do the or, which is 2 straight up and down lines, and we're going to copy this right here. So we can hit enter, and then so we're going to actually have, how many is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different types. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different types. We're going to hit enter so we can just read it better. Whoop. And like that, and then we can take out that last or. And then we need to change these to each of the types that we're going to be checking for. So a colon, and then a semicolon, and then a period, question mark, exclamation point, quotation mark, which will be, this is different because if you try to create a quotation mark within these quotation marks, it will just create 3 in a row, and so it would be a separate string in this one, and then an open string right there that doesn't have a close. So we need to put this like forward slash thing right there so it knows that that's not a function of the string. And then the last one will be a apostrophe, and you don't need to do the forward slash thing there. So inside of this if statement, so we're going to have some brackets here, there will be 2 more if statements inside of there. So this is getting pretty in depth here. So we're going to say if the vector temp I equals the forward slash. Wait a minute. Let's write these if statements in a little bit. So the basic thing that we're going to need to do when we hit this, so it's like, oh well, look at that, there is a comma or any of these punctuations in there. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is lower the length of the word by 1. So start and length I equals start and length I minus 1. I mean, we could do minus minus, but it's fine to do that. So now we can write our if statements, because obviously if there's a quotation mark like right here at the beginning of the word, it's going to be different than if there was a comma at the end. So in order to account for that, we're going to say if vector temp I, if that one was equal to a if that was a quotation mark, then we're going to say and if I is it 0 at the time, so if it was the first letter of the word, then we are going to say start and length 0, the first thing in the array, equals 1. So that means that we're going to tell the people who then another method. So whenever we call this, we're going to tell it that, oh look at that, there's a quotation mark at the beginning of the word, and stop checking the first letter because it'll be incorrect every single time. And the reasons I don't have brackets on that if statement right there is because if it only has one line, then you don't need brackets at all. So, but that's everything changes if it is an apostrophe, because almost always it will have an apostrophe at the end. Well, if it has an apostrophe, then we're going to assume that it has a an S after that. So like an apostrophe S. Now I know that we're not checking for every single little grammatical thing that you can check for, but this is just a general assumption of what they could possibly be inputting. So we're going to do this in extra time because we're going to exclude the S and the apostrophe. So it will do this one, and then it will do this one again in order to account for that apostrophe S. So 2 letters instead of just 1. And that's the end of this method. Or so we can just do return start and length. And that's the end. That's the last thing that we need to put in this method. So now we can build solution, and hopefully there are no errors. And look at that, there are currently no errors, and like the two upper and 2 lower methods, we are also not going to be using this method in the main function where we imported the dictionary and the starts method and the import doc. So we do not need to write anything in the main method right at this moment. This will conclude this video. Thank you for watching, and continue for part 7, where you will learn how to create the check spelling method and the bulk of this program.